Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Choda. Welcome to this video training on how to achieve early retirement with a simple retirement calculator, something that's way better than the 4% rule. So let's talk about the 4% rule. It's very common. And speaking of common, if you follow some common sense investing guidelines, which I'll talk about in this video, you will be able to achieve early retirement. Now let's talk about the 4% rule because everyone talks about that. The 4% rule states that if you have X amount of money set aside for retirement, you should be able to withdraw 4% of that money every year for 25 years before the money runs out. So let's say you have, I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say by the time you're 60, you've set aside, $100,000. You can withdraw $4,000 a year for 25 years. That means you should be able to survive on $4,000 a year up to the age of 85. Now, obviously that's not going to happen, but that was just a simple example. But that gives you a sense of how much money you really need to save, because let's say you needed $25,000 a year for your retirement, which I think is still not enough. You should have set aside, now get this, based on the 4% rule. In fact, let's take a simpler number. Let's take $40,000. If you had $40,000 that you needed for during retirement, then you would have to set aside $1 million, because 4% of $1 million is $40,000. So think about this. You need to have $1 million set aside according to the 4% rule in order to be able to withdraw $40,000 a year over 25 years so that the money doesn't run out. This is presuming you retire at the age of 60 and the money lasts you till the age of 85. But here's the interesting thing that the 4% rule does not take into consideration, which is why I think there's a better solution than the 4% rule. The 4% rule doesn't take into consideration the fact that your $1 million or whatever you set aside is actually earning interest every year, depending on how you invest it, of course, because for most of us there's a pre-retirement rate of return. Presumably you're a little bit more aggressive. Let's say you buy stocks, or you use the money, you run your own business if you're a small business owner, or you tend to be a little bit more aggressive because you try and push a little harder and you take a few more risks. But as you get closer to retirement, you want to take less risks with your money. Presumably you want to invest in bonds. Presumably you want to maybe just keep the money in a savings account. That's fine, because at the end of the day, you should invest money in whatever makes you comfortable, whatever psychologically gives you that sense of comfort so you can sleep well at night. But the point is, there's a pre-retirement rate of return and then there's a post-retirement rate of return. Now, the fact is your money should be earning some rate of return even after retirement. And if you take that into consideration, the 4% rule doesn't really take that into account. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you follow some common sense investing principles, you should be able to enjoy the benefits of early retirement. Now, I know a lot of other channels give you excellent information on financial freedom, personal finance, things like that. So instead of giving you the same old boring financial advice that you get on other financial freedom, financial independence channels, I wanted to focus on a simple retirement planning calculator that I use myself on a daily basis. I'll show you the calculator. It's free. You can download it, and I'll even show you how to use it and the psychology of how to use it the correct way so that you can start to plan your retirement goals using this simple and easy financial planning calculator. So I use this calculator as the basis of my financial independence and early retirement goals. Now, I know there are a lot of vocal supporters out there of the 4% rule, of the financial freedom FIRE movement, and that's all fine. But for me, financial independence and financial freedom and the ability to retire early, knowing how to retire early, comes down to personal decisions, comes down to things that are important to me. And I'll give you 3 factors that are important that will help you plan for your financial retirement, for your financial successful retirement. Now, financial planning for early retirement requires that you answer 3 questions. How do you want to live in retirement? How do you want to spend your money in retirement? That's number 1. Number 2, do you want to retire early? At what age do you want to retire? Number 3, what's a safe withdrawal rate? So at what rate should you withdraw your money so you don't run out of money? Maybe you even have a little bit of money left over to leave it to someone when you're gone. So the app that I'm talking about actually answers all of these questions, and I love this app because I actually refer to it on a daily basis. So let's go ahead and show you that app. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the app that I really like is called the MSN Money app. As you can see, it's available for free. I use an iPhone, so I'm presuming you'll have the MSN Money app on the Android devices as well. So once you open up the MSN Money app, what you want to do is right at the top of the app, you'll see different tabs. You want to go straight to the tab that says Tools. Once you're on the tab that says Tools, you want to click on Retirement Planner. Before I dig into some of these numbers, let me again go over those 3 questions that I asked, the 3 questions that impact financial planning for early retirement. So the 3 questions are, how much can I spend in retirement? In other words, how do I want to live in retirement? Do I want it to be a lavish lifestyle? Do I want it to be a simple, minimalistic lifestyle? Do I want to follow some simple, common sense investing principles? Do I want to follow the financial freedom FIRE movement? That's entirely up to you. After all, retirement spending is going to be different for each one of us. Do I want to retire early? How do you retire early? Do you want to retire young? So, how to retire young? Those are all questions you need to ask. So you need to have an age at which you retire. And as you can see on your screen, that is actually here on the screen. So I put in my retirement age, let's just say at 42. And then the third question is, what should my retirement withdrawal be? In other words, what's a safe withdrawal method or a safe withdrawal rate? So let's start working on this app and let's see how it works. So let's just say your current annual income, let's just say is $45,000. Your savings are $10,000. Your current age, let's just say is 42, and you want to retire at the age of 50, and you expect your life expectancy to be up to the age of 80. Now, your goal in this case is, hey, I want $40,000 a year in retirement income. Your pre-retirement return, let's just say it's 8%. How you get that 8%, that's a topic for a different video. And your post-retirement rate of return is also 8% in just this example. Again, before you start posting in the comments below, oh my God, it's not possible to earn an 8% rate of retirement. Let's not go there. Let's focus on the numbers here. As far as how you get that, I'll be covering that in future trainings. I'll talk about my real estate investing strategies, my stock market investing strategies. So please subscribe to the channel and I'll show you how it's possible to achieve a higher rate of return than what you get in a bank, than what you get in a savings account through safe and logical investing principles, and what I used in order to be able to achieve my financial freedom. But right now, let's take a look at this and let's just hit calculate, and you'll see that the system says to retire at the age of 50 with an annual income of $40,000, each year you'll need to save 90% of your income. So let's say you're earning $45,000. It says you'll need to save $40,596. Now, obviously, this is not possible. No one can save 90% of their income unless they have no expenses. But let's just say your current savings, let's play with this a little bit, $20,000. So let's go $20,000. Those are your current savings. Let's say your current annual income is $60,000. Okay, and let's say you're younger, and this depends obviously on your age. So let's say you are 34 years old and your retirement age is, let's just say it's 45. This is where things start to get really interesting. And life expectancy, I'm going to leave it at 80 for now, and I'm going to say the retirement income is, let's just actually leave it at $40,000, and let's assume the pre-retirement rate of return is 9%. And the post-retirement rate of return, let's say you start to get conservative at the age of 45, is much lower. Let's say it's only 6%, and let's hit calculate. Now, this is where things start to get really interesting. To retire at the age of 45 with an annual income of $40,000, each year you'll need to save 50%, which equates to $30,000. So this is where the math gets really interesting, because now if I click on chart, this is the chart that shows you the breakdown of how much you need to save versus your retirement income, which if you notice, if you look towards the bottom, starts to get withdrawn at the age of 45. But let's click on schedule. This is where the magic really comes in. So at the age of 34, let's say your savings were $20,000. So your ending balance is just $20,000. But at each year, if you actually save that $30,000 that I talked about, you go from year 1, which is 20, to year 2, which is 51,886. So you're adding that 30, basically every year, you're going to be setting aside $30,086. Not to mention the money is earning a 9% return. So let's go back to the schedule. In this example, again, your example is going to be specific to you, which is why I recommend you get the app. But by the age of 45, you'll have more than $500,000 set aside. Now, when you start withdrawing that money, notice that the money does not decline by $40,000 a year. So let's look at the $574,000 to $726. Even though you're withdrawing $40,000, it's not like it goes from $574 to $534. It drops to $569. The reason for that is that money is earning a rate of return, which by the way is why I think the 4% rule doesn't really take this into consideration. And I think this chart is great. By the way, if you are earning money during your retirement years, then it's even better. This chart simply assumes you have no income other than the compounding of your money after retirement. Just I love this. And obviously my numbers are different because I have more savings and I'm 42 years old. I actually retired 5 years ago because I had decided at the age of 35 that I wanted to retire at the age of 38, which I achieved because I've been retired for 4 years now. I'm 42 years old. But again, these numbers are individual to each person. So you can see that at the age of 45, if you start withdrawing $40,000, you can actually live up to the age of 80, and at the age of 80, bam, you'll run out of money. Not too bad if you start to plan your finances a certain way. Now, obviously, let's cover one more example. Let's just say that you've got you've got a greater amount of savings. So let's say you've got $40,000 in savings, okay? And let's say your current annual income, let's leave that at 60, and let's say you're a bit younger, let's say you're 31, and let's say you want to retire at the age of 50, not 45. This is where things get really interesting. You hit calculate, okay? So you only need to set aside $7,495 a year in this case. That's it. So the earlier you start and the longer you work, the easier it is to retire. Again, the earlier you start and the longer you work, it's easier to retire. So again, going back to financial principles, just look at this. So let's go back to the schedule here. I talked about how much you can spend during retirement. In this case, I'm using 40,000 as a benchmark. After all, retirement spending will be different for each one of us. I talked about, do you want to retire early? By all accounts, the age of 50, 51 can be considered early, but obviously there are people who want to retire even sooner. By the way, speaking of retirement, I don't think when you retire you're going to sit at home watching TV. You're probably going to do some sort of work, presumably be productive, contribute to society, and you might even earn some income there. You might pursue a hobby that you're good at. Heck, you might start teaching other people how to retire. So there's obviously the potential for income during retirement because 50, it's a young age. So do you want to retire early? How to retire early? How to retire young? That's your consideration. And what should your withdrawal rate be? In this case, I assume $40,000. Let's just say I said, all right, let me do a withdrawal rate of $75,000 a year. And let's say my pre-retirement rate of return was 10 and my post-retirement rate of return is also 10. In case you're wondering, how is that possible? It's possible using single family real estate, for example, which is what I do. I'll cover that in another training. Please subscribe to get more of my trainings. A lot of work goes into these trainings, a lot of thought, a lot of effort. So if you can like the video and if you can subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. What would your retirement withdrawal rate be? I talked about that. In other words, what's a safe withdrawal rate? In this case, I'm not thinking 4%. I'm just saying I want $75,000 a year in retirement, and that would be my safe withdrawal rate. Let's hit the schedule here. By the way, notice that if the money continues earning a 10% rate of return, to retire at the age of 50 with an annual income of $75,000, okay, you only need to save 15% of your income if you're 31 years old earning $60,000 and have $40,000 to begin with. You only need to save $9,000 a year, and in fact, you'll be able to retire comfortably and you'll be able to withdraw $75,000 a year. And by the way, if you need to adjust these numbers, if you think, oh my God, there's inflation, I need to withdraw more money, that's fine. You can always withdraw a little bit more and work these numbers and sort of adjust these numbers up and down. But this simple retirement calculator, in my opinion, is better than the 4% rule. And this is how you can achieve early retirement. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate you all watching the video. Please please subscribe for future updates. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. And go ahead and comment down below. I read the comments. I'm happy to give you any advice and any input as best as I can. I appreciate you watching the video, and I'll see you in the next training. Thanks.